After living here in Japan for 40 years, people still fairly regularly ask me, can you eat raw fish? Now, I've never had a problem with it. I know some people don't like the idea of raw fish, but if you go into a sushi restaurant in Japan, you're going to find it spotlessly clean, there's no fishy smell, and you get a large variety of different kinds of fish which all taste absolutely delicious. Let's start off today with a look at just what sushi is.
Sushi is vinegared rice combined with something else, usually seafood. The best-known type of sushi is called nigiri. The rice is formed into a small lump and a piece of fresh seafood is laid on top. Eating sushi couldn't be simpler. Just dip it in soy sauce and pop it in your mouth. In some types of sushi, the seafood is already seasoned. In that case, there's no need to dip it in soy sauce. Each piece of nigiri sushi is bite-sized. The rice and fish mix in the mouth with just the right balance of tangy and savory flavors. For the Japanese who have been living on rice and seafood for millennia, it's one of the ultimate favorites. The origins of sushi go back over 2,000 years. When rice agriculture came to Japan from Southeast Asia via China, sushi came with it. At that time, sushi involved fermenting salted fish in rice. After a few months, the rice was discarded and only the fish would be eaten. Lactic acid fermentation prevents fish from rotting and converts proteins in the fish into amino acids that give rich flavor. Thus, sushi was originally a method of preserving fish and adding protein to the diet. This kind of sushi was a special cuisine that was prepared for the nobility at festivals and religious ceremonies. But over the centuries, sushi evolved into new and different forms. Around the 15th century, the eating of rice increased among the common people, and sushi also became more widely eaten. Commoners were reluctant to discard the rice, so they ended the fermentation process early before the rice became a paste and ate the rice with the fish. The next leap in sushi evolution came in the 17th century, when a fast and simple method of adding acidity was developed. The key was using vinegar. It was no longer necessary to wait months for fermentation to add acidity. Now, sushi could be made quickly. The third big shift in sushi came towards the end of the Edo period in the 19th century with the birth of nigiri sushi. This style of sushi, eaten at stand-up food stalls, became hugely popular in Edo, as Tokyo was then called. Nigiri sushi, originally a local cuisine of Tokyo, spread to the rest of Japan when sushi chefs were forced to relocate by events like the Great Kanto earthquake of 1923 and the Second World War. In the 1950s, the first conveyor belt sushi appeared in Osaka. While traditional sushi increasingly came to be seen as a gourmet experience, conveyor belt restaurants offered low prices in a casual setting. They spread nationwide in the 1970s. Sushi was originally an import to Japan, but over the ages it's transformed into a symbol of Japan itself.
All right. I don't know how many times I've been to sushi restaurants, but there are certain things that I've never been quite sure about. For example, is there a certain order that you're supposed to eat the fish? It's hard to ask somehow, and perhaps it's easier to ask you.
People typically recommend starting with fish with a subtle flavor, then moving on to the likes of conger eel, which has a sauce brushed on, and fatty tuna. That's what you usually hear.
What about you?
I think that wherever you go, it's totally fine to start with the things you like best. Frankly, there's not any set order you have to eat in.
Okay, fine. So, what are we going to start with? Let's see. What's that kind of orangey, pale orange one over there?
This may look like salmon, but it's actually a type of trout raised here in Shizuoka. It's called Aka Fuji, or Red Fuji.
Now, another thing I know a lot of people are going to want to ask is, if you look over on the wall there, there's a menu of the different fish available. There's no prices written on there. And I think it can be intimidating for a lot of people walking into a sushi restaurant and not knowing how much they're going to be charged. What do you do in a situation like that?
At a sushi restaurant, it's all about the fish. The chef goes to buy fish at the market every day, so the tuna may look the same here, but one day it might be a tuna caught in a rough sea and not so good, and the next day it could be a very nice one. The price can fluctuate from day to day, and that makes it impossible to write a set price. Of course, sometimes you are on a budget. In that case, you can say to the chef, "Today I have a budget of 3,000 yen," or "Today I've got 5,000 yen." And then you leave it up to the chef. He'll come up with the best selection to match your set budget. Best to leave it up to the professional. Here you are.
Thank you. Okay. Give that a try. That looks really nice. So, oh, another thing now, I've just dipped that in the soy sauce like that. Was that the correct way to do it?
That was absolutely correct. You dip the fish part. If you think about it, in the old days, the fish used in sushi was already seasoned. And when they started using unseasoned fish, people started dipping it in the soy sauce. So the sauce is for the fish.
In Japan, there are a number of styles of sushi restaurant. Ones where chefs hand-make each piece, and ones where preparation is automated. Prices vary widely as well. There are chains where sushi costs as little as 50 yen a piece, and gourmet establishments where it can be 3,000 yen a piece. Sushi chefs optimize not just the taste, but also the appearance. For example, Japanese tiger prawns have a vibrant red hue. The prawns are plunged into boiling salted water for a few minutes to bring out their red color. Then they're placed in cold water to make the color set. This is a sea bream fillet. Hot water is poured over it, which makes the white flesh stand out. Then it is wrapped in kombu seaweed and left for a day to give it a unique red-tinged gloss. This fish is kohada, or gizzard shad. It is butterflied to accentuate the silvery appeal of the skin. Then plenty of salt is sprinkled over the fillets to draw out moisture so that vinegar can penetrate thoroughly. Marinating it in vinegar isn't easy. When preparing a fish like kohada, this step requires the most experience. Kohada treated with salt and vinegar has this beautiful shimmer. Another technique for making sushi look more delicious is decorative cutting. Notches are cut in the back of the kohada. That way, the pale pink flesh will peek through when it is draped over the rice. Sushi looks deceptively simple. Preparing it well actually requires a great deal of skill.
Nigiri sushi, at first glance, doesn't seem that special. It looks like just a piece of fish on some rice. But if you look closely at this piece, you can see scoring. It's on both the top and bottom sides. This is to make it easier to eat. Squid, octopus, and other firm-fleshed seafood have this hidden scoring for that reason.
Okay. Yes, because I know a lot of people that haven't really eaten much sushi. You say squid or octopus, and they automatically think very rubbery, can't bite it. But in fact, that's not the case at all. It's very soft.
Many regions of Japan have developed their own distinctive versions of sushi. This colorful sushi is called bizenbara sushi, and it comes from Okayama. Big portions of seafood like prawns, squid, and fish are joined by vegetables like peas and ginkgo nuts. Here is sugata sushi from Kochi. The silvery skin of fish like mackerel and barracuda is retained so that the fish shimmers as if darting through the sea. Shiobiki sushi from the city of Yonezawa in Yamagata consists of neat rectangles of salmon. The red fish and white rice make a color combination considered lucky in Japan. These regional sushi have been made for special occasions like festivals and weddings for generations. Local delicacies for sumptuous celebratory feasts. That idea has inspired a wide range of sushi styles across Japan.
So where we are now is a kind of recreation of the very beginning of the 20th century, right? We have a little stand here with some extremely large sushi. Wow, look at the size of those. Why are they so big?
Because pieces of sushi are so small nowadays, we think of that as the standard. But in the old days, they served big pieces like this.
This is talking about when?
This would have been in the first half of the 19th century. That's when the Tokyo style of sushi was invented. Sushi was this big back then. And this stall isn't just for the sake of decoration. It's replicating the actual display. They put it out for the customers like this. You saw one you wanted and stood here and ate it on the spot.
This is a recreation of the sushi served in those days. Compare it with today's sushi, and you can see the pieces are about 3 times the size. And look closely, the rice of the old-fashioned sushi is pink. This is because of the kind of vinegar used in those days. Originally, vinegar was made from rice, which was very expensive. But in the early 19th century, people succeeded in making vinegar from sake leaves. This made cheap vinegar readily available, and it could also be used in making sushi. Vinegar made from sake leaves was reddish in color, which turned the rice pink. Sushi changed to its current smaller size after the Second World War, when Japan was suffering from widespread food shortages. The government ordered pubs and restaurants to close. The Tokyo Sushi Union argued that sushi shops were not restaurants, but establishments offering a craft skill of sushi making. They proposed a system where they offered this service to customers in exchange for rice and a fee. Their exchange rate was about 150 grams of uncooked rice for 10 pieces of sushi. The size of those pieces has remained the standard. One advantage of the smaller pieces was that customers could sample a wider range of toppings at their meal.
So yet another restaurant. This time it's a conveyor belt sushi restaurant, but as we can see, the belt is here, but there's nothing moving around, which is a little unusual.
This is a new form of conveyor belt sushi. There's nothing there right now. The sushi doesn't come until you order it.
Okay.
That's the touch panel.
Oh, all right.
In English, too.
Oh, it's got English, okay. Sounds like a good idea. After these conveyor belt sushi restaurants became popular, it's really changed the whole sushi scene, hasn't it, dramatically?
Yes. Before, people didn't know how much they would be charged until the time of payment. But here, the price per dish is fixed. The pricing is very clear-cut. That changed the whole image of sushi, and conveyor belt sushi ushered in that change. But if we think back to when nigiri sushi came along towards the end of the Edo period in the early 19th century, it was made and displayed to customers. That's basically the same with conveyor belt sushi. And they served sushi at reasonable prices. That's another point in common. So I don't see conveyor belt sushi as something new. It's more like it was the rebirth of a forgotten tradition, the return of sushi that was cheap and accessible for everyone.
Also, with sushi becoming popular around the world, I mean, especially in America, you've got things like the California roll is the first one that comes to mind, but there are so many different kinds of sushi that, I mean, some of them, I don't even know if you'd really want to call them sushi or not necessarily, but I think they are accepted internationally now as being part of sushi. How do you feel about all of that?
Well, as for me, I think it's great. People around Japan have made things that taste good to them. That's what sushi is about. So Americans should make the sushi they like. People in Hong Kong, people in Taiwan should make the sushi they like.
So, well, yeah, so from what you've talked about, you talked about how going back to the Edo period and all the changes up till now. So what comes next?
The history of Japanese sushi goes back much further than the Edo period, though. And even when new forms of sushi appeared, the old forms also remained. Here in Japan, for instance, we can still eat funazushi, prepared the way it was 1,200 years ago. And we can also order conveyor belt sushi using a state-of-the-art touch panel. Sushi is really a wide-spectrum cuisine that can cater to all kinds of people, all kinds of preferences. So in the future, I expect even more kinds of sushi will be invented, something that we couldn't even imagine here. I mean, look at chocolate sushi. Who knows? In 10, 50, 100 years from now, that might become the standard. Sushi has such versatility. I'm continually struck by the range of possibilities that sushi holds as a cuisine.